One point that I would make at the outset to kind of frame this issue and put it in perspective is that if you were to take all of the land that is contested in the South China Sea and add it all together, the entire landmass would be about half the size of the island of Manhattan. That is how much land is actually contested in the South China Sea. But it is spread out with a rock here, a reef there, a low tide jutting rock or land feature here, all across these many, many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of square miles of water. And what quickly becomes clear is that the land is not really what the issue is. What is really at issue, and I'll explain this in more detail, is the amount of water that the land can control. Because when you own a rock or an island in a piece of water, that gives you, under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, a territorial sea, territorial waters that extend out 12 miles in all directions, and as I noted, an exclusive economic zone that extend out 200 miles in all directions. And so one little rock unto itself may have virtually no value, but the waters that it commands could be enormously rich in resources and monetizable resources that can be used by the country in question and exported to other markets. So I've said a couple of times, and it needs to be said, the U.S. does not claim 1 square inch of land or water in that region. It's not contiguous to our country. We don't own any of it. We don't claim to own any of it. And we are not part of the problem in that sense. However, as I noted, the United States has massive economic interests that go through those waters to the tune of trillions of dollars worth of surface trade on ships. And we have other security interests more broadly in Asia. So the United States takes the point of view that what China has been doing in recent years, which is to say to build out islands and to populate those islands with materiel, equipment, facilities, and in some cases even weapons, most alarmingly, that has been destabilizing, problematic, and unwelcome from the United States standpoint. Now, what we have said, what the United States has said, is that our interest is in, number one, freedom of navigation through these waters. What we've said is we don't actually take a position on the merits of the legal case about the territorial claims. We actually, as official policy, say that we don't care. What we say that we do care about is that whatever disputes there are, and there obviously are many disputes, that they be resolved peacefully and in a way that does not impede the free navigation of commercial vessels through those waters, and therefore that does not impede or hinder trade and the flow of people, the flow of goods, and so on. One interesting irony in this entire South China Sea question is the fact that China is a ratified signatory to the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, or what I call and others call UNCLOS. However, they themselves essentially acknowledge that they do not adhere to the terms of the agreement to which they voluntarily signed on the dotted line. The irony is that the United States is not a signatory to UNCLOS, but we do adhere to its stipulations. Meanwhile, not being a signatory to UNCLOS, or a ratified signatory, we don't have the moral high ground to criticize China on UNCLOS grounds because we're not a member of UNCLOS. We're not a member of this convention. So even though we abide by its terms, we lose some moral high ground. And one of the positions that you always hear people make, and that I would agree with, is that it would be very wise policy for the United States to ratify membership in UNCLOS. Because we already adhere to its terms, we might as well get the benefits of the moral high ground and the other protections that are afforded.